Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, our Friday panel on the province preparing to test a higher speed limit. But first, members of the legal community taking a stand.
As a lawyer myself, I understand some of their concerns, and I'm happy to meet with those groups and those individuals to continue to build on those relationships and to hear them out and to legislate accordingly.
Alberta's Justice Minister responding to lawyers protesting on the steps of the legislature this week, expressing concern over the Smith government's use of the notwithstanding clause in the Premier's desire to appoint judges. And joining us now, Sean King. He is president of the Criminal Trial Lawyers Association. There he is. Mr. King, welcome to Alberta Primetime. Good to meet you, sir.
You as well. Thank you.
All right. As legal professionals, what pushed you as a group to pick up placards and make a public display of discontent with the Smith government?
Well, it was the pattern of behavior that's happened over the past number of months, dating back to perhaps even all the way back to October, if not earlier, where the Alberta government started to make changes to the Alberta Law Foundation, and then they started using the notwithstanding clause. I think the final thing that really pushed us that we needed to do something drastic was when the Premier started talking about wanting to be able to direct judges and wanting to have more input as to who's going to be appointed as a judge. It's been a slow decline, or I guess we'd say it's been a quick decline over the past few months here, of disrespect to the rule of law and disrespect towards the judiciary in general and our democratic institutions in Alberta.
Okay, well, and let's pick up on one of those points. The Premier has expressed a desire to appoint judges, and there'll even be a question in that regard in the October referendum. Why should that be worrisome to Albertans were it to actually happen?
So the levels of court that she wants to appoint judges are to our Court of King's Bench, which in other provinces might be called the superior level of court, the Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court of Canada. Those are the only levels of court that are allowed or have the ability to strike down legislation that Premier Smith may put in. And so it's concerning that that's where she's going with this, or that's where the government is going with this, is that they want to have some say or more say in the judiciary that would have the ability to hold the government accountable and to either strike down their laws or suggest that changes need to be made.
Even if judges were to be appointed by the Alberta government, though, would they still not need to be impartial, unbiased? Why would judicial independence maybe be in question?
Well, we would hope they'd still be unbiased and independent, but we don't know what's going to happen in that regard. They want to have more say as to how this is going to happen. And I think at the end of it all, we need to start looking at who they be wanting to appoint, who gets put in there. If you look at the level of court that we have where judges are appointed by the Alberta government, which is the Court of Justice, which is the inferior level of court, you can see that a number of people who have been appointed there are former politicians, people who have been formerly directly involved with the government itself. Now, that's at a level of court where they're typically deciding on things that the government doesn't have a direct say in, or direct skin in the game, if you could call it that. The reason that we have the separation of who gets appointed and how the appointment system takes place is to make sure that judges at the higher level who can actually make some changes to the legislation, to the laws, are completely independent. And so the powers that were given to our government to appoint a judge right now is just at the lowest level of court, where those judges do not have the ability to strike down the laws and to change the legislation. So the concern is that we can see who's been appointed already. And I assume those judges are doing a fine job of laying out the law on issues that don't involve the government directly.
All right. Now, how does Justice Minister Mickey Amery fit into this equation? He's a lawyer. Why might you not have confidence in his ability to run the justice portfolio and to your point earlier, uphold the tenets of democracy and rule of law?
I'm not really worried about him being able to run the justice portfolio. I'm more concerned about him being accountable for his actions. So as a lawyer, with every lawyer in this province, except the Justice Minister, we're all beholden to the Law Society. The Law Society of Alberta can sanction us for unlawyer-like conduct or for a number of other things that come from the Code of Conduct. Now, the legislation that recently came out states that the person sitting as the Justice Minister in their current position is not sanctionable by the Law Society. They're essentially above it. This is the one lawyer in the land who is not beholden to the professional code of conduct. And that becomes very worrisome. Why is this person who has the justice portfolio, who is able to control so many things within the government and so many things within justice, is the one person who does not have to answer to the Law Society at the end of the day? That insulation of him being accountable to the Law Society is very concerning. There's also been some other things that have happened here where some powers from the chief electoral officer have now gone into directly the justice minister, and the justice minister now has more control over the way grants are given out from the Alberta Law Foundation. So there's a consolidation of power that's becoming concerning, that these are things that are powers that are going to the justice minister, and now the justice minister is also no longer accountable to the Law Society. More power, less accountability. That's the actual concern.
Okay, as we heard the Justice Minister say off the top just a moment ago, he's happy to meet with your groups, hear you out, and in his words, legislate accordingly. How much of an ear do you have with his office, and have you spoken since the, well, earlier writing letters, but now protesting on the steps of the ledge?
No, we have not spoken as of yet. I'm happy to sit down and have a chat with him and see where we need to go forward from here. There's a lot of concerns that lawyers have about the way the laws are going out right now, and there's been no consultation or a request for us to weigh in on it. But if he wants to have that conversation now, I'm happy to do so.
At the end of the day, Mr. King, what do you hope to accomplish through raising your concerns? Is this to prompt a course correction, a change in government? What are you aiming to motivate?
We need a course correction. I'm not really worried about the government per se itself, if it's NDP or UCP or whatever we may have here. It's a course correction. The pattern of behavior over the last 6 to 12 months shows that this government right now is willing to legislate more powers to itself and also essentially trample on the rights of individual rights of Albertans. Using the notwithstanding clause stops the Charter of Rights from being able to be used by individuals. That's concerning. We want our government, our current government, and any government going forward, to be held accountable for the actions they do, but also to be able to, legislate responsibly, not to force the legislation through using gaps or using release valves in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. We want them to be able to take accountability for their actions and to do the right thing, even if it's hard, even if it's unpopular, even if it's more expensive, but to go through this in the proper functions, not to use a clause that allows the government to steamroll over rights to get legislation passed that they want.
All right. Well, we'll have to leave it there. Appreciate your time this evening, Mr. King. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sean King is president of the Criminal Trial Lawyers Association. From testing 120 to Alberta artists crying foul, a move away from alcohol consumption and the lingering grip of winter. Our Primetime This Week panel is in, and joining us this evening, social worker and community activist Karen Richards and Marty Chan, award-winning author, playwright, and writer. Good evening to you both. And let's begin with the Alberta government gearing up for a test of higher speed limits.
As soon as it warms up and the weather gets a little nicer, we will be launching that.
While specific details have yet to be released, the Transportation Minister confirms the speed limit on a stretch of Highway 2 south of Leduc will be raised from 110 to 120 kilometers an hour, a move he says has the support of motorists.
We had a survey of over 50,000 Albertans that participated, and almost 70% of Albertans thought that rural divided highways should be set at 120 because they are designed and engineered for 120.
The opposition, however, questioning the need for such a move and calling for study results on the claim that highways are engineered for higher speeds.
It's confounding to me the government sees this as a priority that they should be chasing, probably as a smokescreen to hide the other disastrous things that they're doing or not doing to help Albertans out.
Now, beyond the QE2, other multi-lane routes under consideration for the increased speed limit include the Trans-Canada from Banff to the Saskatchewan border, the Yellowhead from Hinton to Lloydminster, Highway 63 to Fort McMurray, and 43 to Grand Prairie. Karen, what do you envision having to happen for the government to declare this initial test of 120 kilometers an hour to be a success?
I think that it's important for evaluation and monitoring that before they actually go into a project, they know what it is that they're looking for in terms of success. I think about when photo radar was repealed here in the city in Edmonton. The province at that time said, now is the time to start collecting baseline data. But really, the hope is that they have some of that information beforehand. With that Edmonton piece, what's interesting is they did a study and found that at certain intersections, there was way more extreme speeding, like 87%. So really, you need to think about what is it that you want to accomplish by having 120 speed limit. Is it about less fines? Is it about less accidents, which I would doubt would happen in the winter? But who knows? What it is that you're looking for is important to know before you actually go forward and start.
Marty, do you feel it's as straightforward as just raising the speed limit to 120, or is there more the government could or should be bringing to the table to back this up, be that safety measures, heightened enforcement?
You're talking about a world where we relied on data and studies, but we're now in a post-fact world where it seems opinions are more important than facts and data and statistics. I mean, I think about the government's decision to sort of put on this online survey to get Alberta motorists to decide whether or not, speeding or increasing the speed limit to 120 is a good idea or not. To me, that's the equivalent of going to a group of kids and saying, would you rather have ice cream or broccoli for dinner? I mean, you know what the answer is, and it drives the decision that the government has made. So now I hope that when they put forward maybe studies or research in terms of the pilot project in that little stretch of highway after Leduc, that they see if there is an increase in fatalities. And I know from the CAA study a couple of years back, they said that a 10% increase in a speed limit can result in a 60% greater chance of having an accident. And yet it only saves about 4 minutes of travel time. And I'm going to bring my wife into this for a second. Whenever she sees somebody blow past her on the road, she always assumes that they're in a rush to go to the bathroom. So if those drivers on those highways really need to take a dump, well, I guess you got to go when you got to go.
Well, and Karen, there is the human element here. The minister has said in the past he trusts Albertans to be responsible. How do you see motorists in this province responding to an increased speed limit?
Yeah, I think about responsibility, like really recognizing, as Marty noted, they're asking citizens what it is that they want, or at least touting citizen-led democracy, where people are now feeling heard. They're feeling heard that they want to drive 120 on the QE2, but really, is that a safer thing to do? Is that what we want to see? I think that it's important to think about responsibility, not just in terms of people making those choices, but what their actions actually show. And hopefully everybody drives safe.
All right. Next up, the Calgary Public Library is facing criticism, and it's coming from artists crying foul over a social media post late last month encouraging the use of artificial intelligence.
That post was very disheartening, very demoralizing. It doesn't, to me, fit the mandate of what I'd expect from my public institutions.
The library is seeking a local artist who uses AI as a tool, collaborator, or in the creation of original work.
Many perspectives on artificial intelligence as it relates to different disciplines, and so we're hoping to learn what this means for the creativity and arts community.
It is a 10-week residency, and the artist will be compensated $50 per hour, up to a maximum of $8,000. Funds some feel should be spent making authentic art.
Opportunity is already very slim. They're not always. We have a lot of artists, especially younger artists as well, coming up, are seeing opportunities being more and more rare.
Concerns the mayor of Calgary says he shares.
You don't need ChatGPT to tell you why that's a bad idea. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me why we would be going down that direction.
The mayor says he'll be asking some questions of the Calgary Public Library and its board. Marty, where do you weigh in on the intersection of AI and creativity? How warranted are concerns from the artistic community?
Do you see the red mark on my face? That's the slap that the Calgary Public Library put across my face and every other artist who has worked and trained in this discipline. I noted that the Calgary Public Library consultant had mentioned that it was an artistic discipline, and a discipline requires training, it requires experience, it requires commitment and consistency. If you throw AI in the mix, and if you want to hide behind the word tool, right, it still undermines the artistic discipline, because the comparison I give is if you constantly used a GPS as a tool to help you find locations you need to go to, eventually the neural pathways that allow you to remember how to get to your local school or your local grocery store, that starts to get erased. And for an artist, if you don't have that discipline, you can't continue to develop and shape your craft, which is exactly what an artistic discipline is supposed to do. It's supposed to help you develop your original and unique voice. And AI is about borrowing from a number of different voices to shape what's going on. And I feel like the Calgary Public Library has sort of missed an opportunity to recognize an important understanding of what it means to be an artist and an original artist. And instead, they've sort of jumped onto the bandwagon and said, AI is cool. Why don't we just brand everything with AI?
Karen, what do you make of this as a fit for a public institution like the Calgary Public Library? Is this just evolving with the times, embracing technology?
So I am not a big proponent of AI in most cases. I think that especially when it is used as creativity, because I think really it was made to take away the mundane chores and computery things that take a lot of time so that we did have more time for leisure and creativity and art. However, I think that I do support the Calgary Public Library in this decision for exactly that reason. The library is doing exactly what the library needs to do and has done for generations, because libraries are set up, they're one of the best public institutions where it's about people getting access to information, access to technologies, even books at one time were considered technology. So really, this library is going with where we know the future of learning is, which is about learning new information and relearning information rather than kind of book learning and research in that sense. So I give kudos to the library for going with the times in that sense. I just hope that it's not about artists being ripped off, really, because most artists did not give consent for their work to be used in this way. So we'll see what the residency has to offer.
Indeed, indeed. Okay, time for us to take a quick break. When we come back, slumping alcohol sales and winter weather hanging on. More from our Primetime This Week panel in a moment. Welcome back. The weekend is almost here, but it would seem boozing it up just isn't in the cards for many younger Albertans.
No plans. Just hanging out with friends.
Not this weekend. I will be studying for my midterms.
No, not really. I'm not a huge drinker.
No, not really. I'm just gonna stay home.
And the decision to stay sober might be more than a coincidence. According to Statistics Canada, liquor authorities and other retail outlets, sales dropped by 1.6% in the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2025. That comes as in-store prices increased 1.6%, all leading to the largest annual decrease in alcohol sales in 20 years.
The decline in consumption is among younger people rather than older people.
Yeah, and businesses are catching on, many offering non-alcoholic alternatives.
It's absolutely hand over fist the fastest growing aspect of our business.
As for why many young Canadians are cutting booze consumption, the prioritizing of health, being financially conscious, and their ability to have fun without it. Karen, how big of a cultural shift is this compared to decades past?
Yeah, I think it is a big cultural shift, and maybe that's exactly why. Maybe people are thinking differently, moving in different ways than their forefathers in that sense, or learning some of those lessons. I think there is so many drivers, like you mentioned, cost of living being something, definitely. Eventually something has to fall off your budget, and so maybe this is an easy way to save some costs. However, those fancy mocktails, I find those it's basically juice, and they're almost expensive as alcohol anyways. I also just really want to point out, I think that there's a big cultural, religious shift in terms of people that have come to settle in Canada, love those people, and I'm excited because it really brings a different perspective sometimes in terms of consumption patterns. And so that could also be one of the drivers that we're seeing why people are drinking less. Doesn't mean that people aren't still doing things, because even if you're not drinking, everybody has a vice. So I think it's important to remember that too.
Marty, what's your read on the here and now? Why it is that the younger generation is either drinking less or maybe even not at all?
I think it's a fracturing of society. Like, we are given a lot more options in terms of leisure activities. I'm old enough to be almost a baby boomer, but I'm just in that little zone between Gen X and baby boomer. And when I was a young adult, I remember the options that you had for entertainment was you go to the bar, you go to the movie, or in a small town, you sit in your friend's pickup truck and drive up and down Main Street. So there were fewer options. And if we look at the Gen Z folks now, they can go online to connect with people, right? Online dating apps, online gaming. They found different ways to connect with their friends in a social setting without having to leave their own home. And I suspect that has part of something to do with it, as well as the cost and the rising cost of booze. Also, just thinking about what a Gen Z might have seen of their parents or grandparents constantly drinking. Maybe it's one of those things where I don't want to be like my grandparents. I've got other options. I can live life to the fullest without the crutch of having a can of beer in my hand.
Yeah, Marty, you brought up memories of youth, cruising Main Street.
Small town there,
yeah, small town Alberta, for sure. Okay, one more topic, and it's one that has many Albertans moaning. Parts of the province digging out from under a mid-March dumping of snow, and while frustrating for those eager for spring, others taking it in stride.
It was either take the dogs out first or shovel. Dogs didn't make it past the front yard, so now I'm out shoveling.
For those choosing to shovel, a reminder from Emergency Health Services about dealing with heavy wet snow.
Avoid any twisting motions if possible. And biggest thing is if you feel any pain whatsoever, please stop.
While crews are out with the big equipment clearing heavy volume city routes and highways, it may not be the last of their winter weather worries.
We could still see these snow events into April. It's not unusual for Calgary. You know, the biggest challenge with winter events at this time of year is the fluctuation in temperature.
It's a good workout. I don't mind it. Like, I curl, so it's good for my sweeping.
Yeah, good for the sweeping. All right, in Calgary alone, emergency crews responded to about 100 collisions Thursday, 16 resulting in injuries. Marty, we've had a mix of snowy conditions, big melts, now again snow, cold weather for some of us. How would you rate our winter and the toll it's taken?
Okay, the best way I can sum it up is this winter has felt so long that at the beginning of it, I had hair, and now look at what has happened to me. So I think this winter has put a lot of our patience to the test, especially in Edmonton with the snow clearing crews and how the city of Edmonton tried to manage keeping the roads clear. There were a lot of complaints about windrows piling up and people having to dig themselves out. The city got an earful about how they did. They had a chance when our second major snowfall hit. They did a little better, and I'm hoping if there's another big blast of snow hitting us, that the city will be on it. But it certainly did put my patience to the test, and I think I needed a new shovel along with a toupee.
Last 15 seconds to you, Karen. Are you done with winter?
Oh, I've been done with winter. I try to go outside, but once the snow gets dirty, yeah. I think people get tired of it.
We're all finished with it. Okay, and we're all finished with the panel. Out of time. Great to see you both. Thank you for this.
Thank you, Michael.
Take care.
Now, here are a few responses to a recent story posted by CTV News about landowners tearing up lease agreements with an oil company that hasn't paid rent for 3 years. Doug says oil company and a farmer, guess who will win? Popcorn thinks, why did you not tear the lease up years ago. And Crystal says Alberta doesn't hold oil companies accountable for anything. Instead, taxpayers pay for their mistakes. Remember, you can always have your say. Email us anytime at comments@albertaprimetime.com. That is our program for tonight. Have a great evening and a great weekend, everyone, from all of us at Alberta Primetime. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time.